We're back with more as we continue our discussion about the Steelers after the season and now looking ahead to a new season, the draft and all that stuff. Jeff, I want to ask you first in this segment about the coaching situation now that it's known that Keith Butler will be done. He's going to retire. Wanted to do it last year, was talked into staying another year, although he didn't call the plays. Who is the new defensive coordinator? Is it in-house? Do they go to Terrell Austin, or should they look around the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think all roads lead to Terrell Austin. I think he was kind of not, I don't know if promised is the right word, but given every opportunity to win that job when he came in, which is why he's had other titles. I mean, he's been defensive coordinator at a couple other places, including being very successful in Detroit, and he's interviewed with a number of organizations over the span of his career and has a number of different things on his resume. I think it will be Terrell Austin, and what I would love for them to do, if that is indeed the case, and I think that's a good hire, that you bring in someone young and vibrant to coach that secondary. I think that's one of the things that's missing from this coaching staff, those young, up-and-coming 30-something coaches, something that Mike Tomlin was, that he eventually got him promoted to head coach. Love to see somebody like that added to the staff.
Yeah, I understand the criticism that the Steelers promote from within too often, and I get it in a lot of cases, but this isn't one of those cases. Really, you have a guy who's been a defensive coordinator in the league for a pretty long time, for a couple different teams. He's been a head coaching candidate before. He understands the staff. He's a respected guy. He's a likable guy, a leader type guy. So in this case, Terrell Austin, it wouldn't be one of those like quote unquote lazy promotion hires. So I'd be really surprised if he's not the choice. And I don't think it's a bad choice at all either.
Yeah, I mean, he has experience. There's no question about that. It's just a question of, do they owe it to themselves to look around to find somebody else? And I guess that's something they probably have already predetermined. All right, what about Matt Canada, Jeff? Because he's still there. It sounded like Mike Tomlin likes what he brings to the table, but there's some reporting out there that indicates maybe the ownership may want to go in a different direction. If he stays, what can you expect differently moving forward?
I think that's a great question because we haven't seen Matt Canada as an NFL offensive coordinator, and I think that's one of his biggest drawbacks is we haven't seen him do it at this level. Saw him have a lot of success at Pitt. We saw him have not much success at LSU, and we saw him put some things together with Maryland over his short time there. I think you'll see some more quarterback mobility. I think that's why Mike Tomlin discusses that so much. Maybe where a quarterback rolls out more than we see. I mean, you weren't going to roll out Roethlisberger to the right or to the left, either side, unless he was running for his life. So I think that's something you'd see more. I think we've seen already some of the jet sweeps and some of the motions, but I think that's what would be different under Matt Canada.
I'm lost here in all of this. I'm lost how Matt Canada got this job. I'm lost here how Matt Canada continues to get the job. I'm lost here in the whole Steelers the whole Steelers coordinator situation. The revelations with Keith Butler that he didn't call his own plays, that Mike Tomlin called the whole defense. I'm just lost by the whole, I guess, totem pole and functionality of this Steelers staff right now, guys. I don't know any other way to put it.
No, I think that's fair because you wonder if you're in that position, why are you in that position? They've had a lot of success with sacks on the defensive side of the ball since Keith Butler was there. He was the guy who was chosen after Dick LeBeau left. So, a lot of this makes me wonder. And with regard to Canada, Chris, what does he do differently next year? You can tell me all you want about quarterbacks, but I want to see more plays. And I didn't see anything that made me think he was ready for this job in his rookie season.
Yeah, that's kind of – now you could say the product he had to work with from the quarterback to the offensive line to even to a point the receivers – didn't really set him up for success, right, as a rookie coordinator. Now, you could go back and say it was a mistake to make a rookie coordinator in this situation. That's a whole other, but that's over and done with. So in that sense, he deserved the second year. But you're right. I don't know what we saw. Now, I thought it was interesting. One of the things Mason Rudolph said was that essentially he'll be completely subservient to Matt Canada, that he's not an 18-year veteran. That implies to me, as strong as anybody within the organization on the record has been, that Ben Roethlisberger was the one, this was his offense, and Matt Canada was sort of hamstrung by that. So whenever Mike Tomlin thinks he sees him or likes him, he hasn't had a chance to do that yet. So it only stands to reason to get the second season, whether you like it or I like it or anybody likes it.
There is some truth, a lot of truth in the fact that Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, the pocket was the only place that he was, and he had an inability to throw the football in the middle of the field deep. and it really hamstrung what everybody wanted to do. That being said, you throw short of the sticks every single time. It was just a recipe on both sides for disaster. The Steelers went into the season, they were going to be about a 500 team and maybe make the playoffs and lose in the first round. And the Steelers did exactly that. They were around a 500 team. They went to the playoffs, and they lost in the first round. I mean, it always was going to be what it was. It was never going to deviate course.
And the crazy thing, Jeff, was that at the beginning of the season, it never did seem to match up. We talked about it a lot. I know a lot of people did. You're bringing back a Hall of Fame quarterback who does not move well with a young offensive line and a first-year offensive coordinator and a first-year offensive line coach. That doesn't seem to add up to continuity.
Well, I'll say this in Canada's behalf. I don't care who you have as offensive coordinator. They didn't have a lot of talent on offense. And the talent, and some of the talent they did have were inconsistent as could be. I mean, Claypool's dropping passes are not getting open. Deontay Johnson had that issue towards the end of the year. James Washington, I don't know what the deal was with James Washington. Freiermuth admitted that, hey, there were a couple of games towards two-thirds way into the season that he just wasn't even there. He kind of hit that wall. I mean, they need more consistent plays from the guys on the field. I don't care what coordinator you have. So as much as it's Matt Canada, like a lot of those guys offensively need to look themselves in the mirror if they're good enough to play at this level and be a hell of a lot better than they were this year.
All right, I have a... Hold on, Chris. So we got to go to a break. But when we come back, after we do the Penguins segment, I'm going to come back to this, and we're going to talk about moves that need to be made. I'm talking about contracts. I'm talking about fifth-year options. That's later. But next, we're going to talk about the Penguins, who are red hot right now, and what happens at the trade deadline when that eventually gets near. That's next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.